Welcome to Sleepy Music Tales. Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to this peaceful corner of the night, a place where stories unfold like gentle whispers beneath the starry sky, softly guiding you into deep, restful sleep. I am Elias, your storyteller, and I am truly grateful to have you here. This space was created to offer warmth and tranquility through timeless tales, interwoven with soothing sounds and healing frequencies, designed to calm your mind, relax your body, and ease your spirit into the gentle embrace of sleep. Tonight, as you listen, you'll be surrounded by healing frequency music, crafted to restore your energy, release the stress of the day, and bring balance to both body and soul. Let the soft, rhythmic tones wash over you, melting away any lingering worries, leaving you lighter, calmer, and ready to drift into peaceful slumber. But before we begin, take a moment to truly settle in. Find your most comfortable position. Adjust your pillows, wrap yourself in warmth, and gently close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the calmness filling your chest, and exhale slowly, releasing the weight of the day. Let your thoughts soften like small waves retreating from the shore, dissolving into stillness. This is your moment, free from demands, free from noise, where peace is yours to hold. Tonight, I invite you on a journey into a story of love, sacrifice, and the choices that test the depths of the heart. A tale where emotions and reason intertwine, and where bonds between two souls transcend time and memory. It is a reminder that sometimes love isn't about holding on, but about letting go for the happiness of the one you cherish, even when it means bearing the weight of sorrow alone. So now, let yourself relax. Close your eyes. Take another calming breath, and allow me to guide you into the world of the legend of the Leanan Sídhe, a hauntingly beautiful tale of love, inspiration, and the price paid for passion beyond mortal reach. A world where an ancient luminous tree stands witness to fateful moments, and where love and sacrifice intertwine, leaving behind a bittersweet aftertaste that lingers long after the final word is spoken. Let the story begin. Long ago, when the Aldamara forest was revered as the dwelling place of ancient spirits, there lived a young woman named Sorcha in a small village called Cairnlear. She was renowned not only for her pure beauty, but also for her voice, clear and soothing, like a gentle stream weaving through the serene woods. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the rolling hills, villagers would see her sitting by the shores of Lunmere Lake, singing melodies so enchanting that even the wind seemed to pause and listen. Sorcha's love for music was profound, but it was her love for a man that truly defined her heart. His name was Iaran, a wandering minstrel with eyes that held the glimmer of distant horizons and an old lute worn from countless journeys. They first met on an autumn afternoon beneath the luminous tree, a colossal ancient tree, its bark etched with glowing patterns that shimmered faintly under the golden light. Iaran had been passing through Cairnlear when Sorcha, gathering herbs nearby, was drawn to the haunting notes of his music. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, laughter mingling with shared songs, and soon, what began as chance companionship blossomed into love. Iaran stayed in the village for her, Together they composed ballads that stirred the hearts of even the most stoic villagers, filling the square with warmth and joy. Yet, as with many stories whispered through the folds of time, happiness is often fleeting. One harsh winter, a mysterious fever swept through Cairn Lair. No remedy could quell it, and Éireann, once vibrant, grew pale and frail. Sorcha, desperate to save him, sought every cure the village elders knew, but to no avail. Whispers among the villagers spoke of a legend. Deep within Aldamara lay the Amara fruit, hidden beneath the luminous tree, capable of granting a single wish at a cost. Most dismissed it as mere folklore, but to Sorcha it was a sliver of hope she could not ignore. Under the shroud of night, with the moon casting silvery beams between skeletal branches, she ventured into Aldamara. Each step seemed to carry her deeper into a realm that existed between worlds. Trees stretched their gnarled limbs skyward like ancient sentinels, and the air was thick with the scent of moss and something older, something magical. At last she reached it. The luminous tree stood in quiet grandeur, its bark pulsing with a soft, ethereal light, veins of silver threading across its surface. Nestled at the roots was the Amara fruit, glowing with a warm amber hue, as if it held the embers of a dying star. As Sorcha reached out, a voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the stillness. "Do you understand the price you must pay?" A figure emerged from the shadows. Brannock, an ancient forest spirit whose form shifted like mist. His eyes gleamed like twin moons, reflecting both wisdom and warning. Despite the chill that crept down her spine, Sorcha's resolve did not waver. "I will pay whatever it takes," she answered, voice steady. "Just let him live." A faint smile curled at the corners of Brannock's lips, a smile devoid of warmth. "The Amara fruit grants what you desire most. But every wish is a melody steeped in sorrow. You shall keep your love, but lose yourself in return." Sorcha did not hesitate. Her teeth sank into the fruit, a rush of sweetness flooding her senses, followed by searing pain that lanced through her chest, sharp and merciless. The tree's glow flared, bark splitting open to reveal a radiant pathway, and in that brief, luminous moment, she saw Éireann, eyes opening, color blooming back into his cheeks. He lived. But fate is never generous without cruelty. In the days that followed, Éireann's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Yet Sorcha began to change. Her reflection revealed subtle shifts, eyes flecked with silver, a glow beneath her skin that hadn't been there before. When she sang, people were drawn to her voice like moths to flame. But afterward, they would sit in stunned silence, their vitality inexplicably diminished. Éireann too grew distant. Though healed, he became lethargic, his gaze often empty, as if pieces of his spirit were slipping away. Desperation gnawed at Sorcha until she sought counsel from Branwen, a young healer in the village, and the only one who dared speak of the old magic. Branwen listened gravely before delivering the truth Sorcha had feared. "You have become a Leanan Sídhe," she said softly. "A muse cursed to grant inspiration at the cost of the life force of those you love. Éireann's strength fades because your essence now feeds on his." Sorcha's heart fractured at the revelation. Desperate to protect him, she tried to distance herself, but the bond forged by the Amara fruit was relentless. Her very presence drew Éireann back to her, like the tide pulled by the moon. Love, once their sanctuary, became a prison. On a bitter, frost-laden night, Sorcha awoke to find Iran beside her, still, his breath shallow. His lips formed her name in a faint, tender whisper before silence claimed him. His eyes, once filled with music and mischief, now stared into a void beyond reach. Grief consumed her. She fled into Aldemara, her cries echoing through the trees until she collapsed beneath the luminous tree, tears carving tracks down her pale cheeks. "This wasn't what I wanted," she screamed. "I saved him only to lose him another way." Brannock appeared, his expression untouched by pity. "Love is fleeting, mortal or not. You sought to defy fate and thus became its instrument. Is there no way to undo this?" Sorcha's voice broke. Brannock tilted his head. "To reverse a melody already played? No, but choices remain. Accept the curse and live as a muse to countless others. Immortal, yet forever empty, or what? Let the curse devour what remains of your heart. Feel nothing, want nothing. Wander these woods until even your name fades like smoke." Silence stretched between them. Then, standing amidst the shimmering roots of the luminous tree, Sorcha made her choice. She vanished from Cairn Lear that night, leaving behind whispered legends. Travelers claimed to hear haunting melodies deep within Aldemara, songs that stirred both longing and dread. Many artists sought her, yearning for the inspiration her presence promised. But those who found her rarely returned unchanged. Branwen, now aged and bent with time, would sit by her hearth, telling the story to wide-eyed children huddled close to the fire. She is not evil, only trapped. Her love turned to sorrow, her gift into a burden. When the wind carries a tune through the trees, listen closely. It's her voice, still searching for the warmth she lost. What none knew was that Sorcha, despite the curse's cruel grasp, never fully let go of Iran. The melodies she played beneath the moonlit boughs of Aldemara were steeped in memories of him. Though the curse tried to erase her past, music was a language beyond magic's reach. In every note, every lingering chord, Iran's laughter, his gaze, the way his fingers brushed hers beneath the summer stars, lived on. And so she wandered, neither fully spirit nor woman, caught between worlds, her song eternal, her heart forever echoing with a love sacrificed yet never forgotten. Time flows like a winding river, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but always relentless. For Sorcha, centuries stretched into an eternity of wandering and sorrow, her songs echoing through the trees of Aldemara like faint whispers lost to the wind. Beyond the forest's edge, the world continued in its fleeting human rhythms. Generations came and went, and the legend of the Leanan Sídhe faded into little more than fireside folklore until destiny, ever patient, reached out once more. In the village of Kenler, nestled between rolling hills and the sprawling edge of Aldemara forest, lived a young minstrel named Kalin. His music was once the heartbeat of the village. On market days, his lively tunes filled the air with joy, setting children to dance in the cobbled square while elders closed their eyes, letting his melodies carry them back to days long past. In the evenings, families gathered beneath lantern-lit eaves, sharing meals while Kalin's ballads wove stories of love, laughter, and distant lands. His lute, worn smooth by years of use, seemed an extension of his very soul. But lately, that soul felt empty. It had begun as a faint restlessness, a note that rang hollow, a chord that refused to resolve. At first, Kaylin brushed it off, blaming fatigue or fleeting moods. Yet as weeks turned into months, the unease grew, spreading like a shadow beneath his skin. His fingers, once so sure, fumbled over familiar strings. Songs that used to flow from him like a river now trickled out in halting, lifeless fragments. He tried to push through it. At the Harvest Festival, he stood before a crowd eager for his music. Faces smiled up at him, children's eyes bright with anticipation, elders nodding in encouragement. He began to play. Notes stumbled, melodies faltered. The crowd's smiles faded, replaced by murmurs of confusion and sympathy. By the end, only polite applause met him. That night, lying awake beneath his modest thatched roof, Kaylin stared at the beams overhead, his lute resting silently beside him. What's happening to me? He wondered. Music had always been his anchor, his solace. Without it, the world felt colorless, empty. Then the dreams began. They came like soft waves, washing over him with a strange, insistent pull. In these dreams, a vast forest stretched out before him, moonlight filtering through ancient branches. Somewhere beyond the trees, a song drifted, haunting, beautiful, and achingly familiar. He would follow it, feet sinking into moss and leaves, drawn toward a great glowing tree whose bark pulsed with veins of silver light. Beneath its sprawling branches stood a woman cloaked in shadow and moonlight, her face obscured, her voice wrapping around him like a warm blanket on a cold night. Come, she seemed to beckon, find me. But just as he reached out, the dream would shatter, leaving him gasping in the pre-dawn darkness, heart pounding and the melody slipping away like mist through his fingers. Each morning he reached for his lute, desperate to recreate the song. Sometimes he caught a fragment, a fleeting run of notes that sent a shiver down his spine, but it would vanish the moment he tried to grasp it fully. Frustration clawed at him. Sleep, once a refuge, became a torment of longing and unanswered calls. Concern grew among the villagers. Kaylin's changed, they whispered. His songs have lost their spark. Children who once flocked to him now hesitated, sensing the weight pressing down on their beloved minstrel. Unable to bear it, Kaylin sought out Branwen, the village elder known for her knowledge of old tales and things best left forgotten. Her cottage, tucked beneath the boughs of an ancient oak, smelled of herbs and smoke. She welcomed him with a weathered smile, but said nothing as he poured out his story of the dreams, the elusive melody, the emptiness hollowing him out from the inside. When he finished, Branwen stirred the fire, sending a cascade of sparks into the air. Dreams can be more than fancy, lad, she said at last, voice rough with age. Sometimes they're doorways. Sometimes warnings. It doesn't feel like a warning, Kaylin admitted, rubbing his hands over his face. It feels like something's calling me. Branwen's gaze sharpened. Many have felt the forest's pull before. Few return unchanged. You do well to be wary. But what if it's the only way to find what I've lost? His voice cracked, the weight of his desperation seeping through. She sighed, leaning back. Your heart knows the path, lad, but tread carefully. Not all songs are meant to be heard. Kaelin left her cottage with no more answers than before, but with an ache that throbbed deeper. He tried to ignore it, to fill his days with mundane tasks, repairing tools, helping in the fields, but the pull only grew stronger. His gaze lingered on the tree line of Aldamara, shadows flickering just beyond sight. Then, one morning, as he washed his face in the cool waters of Lunmere Lake, his eyes caught something unusual. On the inside of his left wrist, a mark had appeared, a delicate symbol resembling a musical note entwined with curling vines. Faint at first, it darkened throughout the day, pulsating gently beneath his skin. His pulse quickened. He scrubbed at it, half hoping it was dirt or some trick of the light. It wasn't. The skin was smooth, the mark warm to the touch. Back to Branwen he went, bursting through her door. She glanced at the mark and her face paled. Her fingers, cool and steady, traced the lines as if reading an ancient script. "I know this," she murmured. "Long ago, there were stories of artists marked by the forest, chosen." "Chosen for what?" Kaelin demanded. Her lips thinned. "Greatness or ruin?" The days that followed stretched like taut strings, every moment vibrating with tension. The villagers noticed his distraction, his far-off stares, his restless pacing along the village's edge. At night the dreams intensified. The woman's face remained obscured, but her voice, her song wound through him like a vine reclaiming an abandoned ruin. He tried to resist, truly he did, but the emptiness within him burned, a hunger no meal could sate, no words could soothe. His lute lay untouched in the corner, gathering dust, a silent reproach. Until one evening, beneath a sky painted with streaks of gold and crimson, Kaelin stood at the boundary of Aldamara. The trees loomed before him, tall, ancient, their branches tangled in whispers he could almost hear. Behind him lay Cairnler, the warmth of hearth fires, the comfort of familiar faces. Ahead, shadows and mystery. His heart pounded. Branwen's warnings echoed in his mind. Few return unchanged, but the mark on his wrist pulsed in time with his heartbeat, and deep within something stirred. A fierce longing, a need that eclipsed fear. "Just once," he whispered to the trees, "just to see." And with that, he stepped into the forest. The air changed instantly. It was cooler beneath the canopy, thick with the scent of moss, earth, and something older, something that hummed beneath his skin. Light filtered through in dappled patches, painting the forest floor in shifting patterns. Time seemed to stretch and fold, minutes bleeding into hours as he walked deeper, guided by instinct and the faintest trace of a melody only he could hear. Leaves crunched softly underfoot. Somewhere, water trickled over stones. Yet no birds sang. No wind stirred the branches overhead. It was as if the entire forest held its breath. Then, just as doubt began to creep in, the trees thinned and he emerged into a small clearing. Moonlight spilled across the grass in silver pools, casting everything in an ethereal glow. And there, at the far end, stood the luminous tree. Its bark shimmered with threads of silver light, branches sprawling like a celestial map etched against the night sky. Kaelin's breath caught in his throat. It was real. All of it was real. He took a step forward and stopped. The melody returned, stronger now, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. His mark burned beneath the skin, and something deep within his chest tightened. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered, yet couldn't make himself turn back. His fingers itched for his lute. His mind swirled with 1,000 questions, but in that moment, standing beneath the silver glow of the tree, one truth rang clear. He had found the place from his dreams, and whatever awaited him next had been waiting for a very long time. Moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting faint beams that painted the forest floor in soft, silvery hues. Each step Leanan took sank into the layers of decaying leaves, producing faint rustles that echoed in the suffocating stillness. Within him churned a tangled mix of fear, curiosity, and a longing that defied logic, a hunger not for food or drink, but for answers, and for the music that had long abandoned him. Before him stood the luminous tree, radiating an ethereal glow so vivid that even the air around it seemed to shimmer. Its bark was etched with luminous silver veins, pulsing like hidden streams beneath the surface. The branches stretched outward, forming an expansive canopy that cradled the moonlight, weaving a dreamlike tapestry overhead. Leanan's heart pounded. This was no dream. Everything, the sweet scent mingled with the damp earth, the cool air brushing against his skin, the surreal brilliance of the tree felt undeniably real. And then the singing began again, soft, alluring, a melody that caressed his senses, drawing him forward like a siren's call. He swallowed hard. That voice, the one that had haunted his nights, echoing in his thoughts, now surrounded him, weaving through the trees, wrapping around his very soul. Step by hesitant step, he approached, and then he saw her. Standing beneath the sprawling branches, a woman emerged from the shadows, her silhouette fluid as if she were formed from moonlight and mist. Her hair, black as the depths of midnight, cascaded down her back, shimmering as though it drank in the light. A gown clung to her figure, woven from fabrics so delicate it seemed spun from starlight and whispers. But it was her eyes that trapped him, vast, luminous, carrying an ancient sadness intertwined with a tenderness that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. "Leanan," she spoke, her voice a symphony, every note perfectly placed, resonating with warmth and melancholy. He froze, the world narrowing to the space between them. How do you know my name?" His voice cracked. Instinctively, his fingers tightened around the worn handle of his lute. She smiled, soft, bittersweet. "I know more than you think," she murmured. "You've been calling to me through your restless dreams, your faltering notes, your hunger for something beyond the ordinary." "I've merely answered." Leanan's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" Tilting her head, her hair slid like a dark river over her shoulder. "I am Sorcha," she said. There was a pause, the name lingering between them like a delicate, vibrating chord. "I am the echo of the music you've lost, the source of the melody that haunts you." Her name stirred something distant in his memory, faint recollections of stories whispered by firelight. Sorcha, Leanan Sídhe, a name from old legends, a muse who offered artists inspiration beyond mortal comprehension, at the price of their very souls. "You fear me," she observed gently, her gaze never wavering, "but your heart, it longs more than it fears." He clenched his fists, torn between caution and the undeniable pull toward her. I just want my music back," he confessed, voice hoarse. "What is it in me that draws you here?" Sorcha stepped closer. A faint, intoxicating fragrance surrounded her, a blend of forest blooms, rain-soaked leaves, and something sweeter, darker. Her fingers reached out, brushing the mark on his wrist, and at her touch heat flared through him, his heartbeat roaring in his ears. "You are destined," she whispered. "This mark, it's a bridge. Your longing, your ache, your forgotten melodies, they called. I heard, I waited." His breath hitched. Half of him wanted to flee, the other half rooted him to the spot. "So, what do you want from me?" Her smile deepened, sorrow and desire dancing in her eyes. "It's not about want," she said softly. "It's about need. I need a soul like yours, a flame flickering on the edge of darkness, desperate for kindling." Kaylin took a shaky step back. "And if I refuse?" Sorcha lowered her gaze, her voice gentle as falling leaves. "You'll live," she murmured, "but always incomplete. Your melodies will remain shadows of what they once were. You'll grow old with that emptiness clawing at you, dying with regrets etched deep in your bones." The truth of her words cut sharper than he expected. He remembered the hollow applause, the fading interest in his songs, the ache of being forgotten. Then her gaze lifted, a spark of stars glinting in her eyes. Or what? Stepping nearer, she closed the distance between them until her breath mingled with his. "Or you accept me. Let me fill you with inspiration beyond your wildest dreams. Your every note will resonate with raw beauty. Your music will stir hearts for generations. You will be remembered, immortal through your art." It was temptation incarnate, a promise of fulfillment that brushed against every aching part of him. "But what's the price?" he rasped. "No gift comes free." Her smile faltered. The ancient sorrow in her eyes deepened, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "The price is you." His heart lurched. "Each night I visit," Sorcha explained, "I will grant you inspiration. You'll create as you've never imagined. But with every song, every note, I will take a piece of you. Slowly, sweetly. You won't notice at first. You'll feel vibrant, alive. But as dawn breaks, you'll awaken weaker, wearier. Your reflection will grow pale, your strength ebbing drop by drop." Kaylin's throat tightened. "And when there's nothing left?" Sorcha's gaze didn't waver. "When the final melody leaves your lips, you'll be empty. A candle burned brightest before extinguishing." Fear coiled around him, hot and suffocating. Yet even through that fear, something darker stirred. Desire. To create again, to feel alive in his craft, to matter. "You're terrified," she murmured, fingertips tracing his jaw. "But what's more terrifying? A life without passion, or one that ends ablaze with glory?" Memories surged, crowds dispersing after his lifeless performances, the empty glances, the weight of mediocrity settling on his shoulders. To be forgotten, to fade away, that terrified him more than any cost. His gaze flicked to her lips, then her eyes, those endless starlit depths. If I say yes, he swallowed. There's no turning back, is there? Her touch lingered on his mark, sending warmth pulsing through him. No. Silence stretched between them. His mind screamed warnings, his heart yearned. And then he nodded, a breath, hers or his, caught in the stillness. Then Sorcha smiled, luminous and haunting. So be it, she whispered. And in that moment, the world shifted. Destiny was sealed. The cold wind drifted through Aldemar Forest, rustling the silver-tinted leaves and making them shiver like the whispers of long-forgotten spirits. Kalen stood still beneath the sprawling branches of the luminous tree, his breath shallow, heart thundering against his ribs. His whispered yes still lingered in the air, a decision as irrevocable as it was intoxicating. Sorcha's smile, soft and enigmatic, glowed like a pale moonlit halo, warm yet laced with an undefinable sadness. And then everything changed. Raising her hand, Sorcha's slender fingers traced delicate patterns through the air. The luminous veins of the tree pulsed brighter, syncing perfectly with the rapid beat of Kalen's heart. The very air thickened, charged with something ancient and potent. Every inhalation filled his lungs with the heady scent of wildflowers, rain-soaked earth, and something sweetly dangerous. "Close your eyes," she whispered, her voice like silk wrapping around him, "and surrender to the music within." A flicker of hesitation crossed his mind, but his longing eclipsed fear. He obeyed. Silence. Then, a single note, gentle, fragile, but like the surface of a still pond shattered by a stone, it spread, resonating deep within him. It wasn't coming from his lute or the world around him, it was inside him, in his chest, his bones, his very blood. The music surged up like a river breaking through a dam, flooding him with a torrent of sound, color, and emotion. His eyes snapped open. Sorcha stood watching him, her gaze unreadable. Around her, the air thrummed with an invisible symphony, and for a moment, Kalen felt weightless, as if the music wasn't just sound, but life itself pouring back into him. "Take it," she breathed, nodding toward the lute slung across his back. He reached for it, hands trembling. His calloused fingers brushed the strings, one note, then another. And suddenly, it erupted. His fingers danced, the melody pouring out in waves of staggering beauty. Each note painted pictures in the air, golden meadows swaying under spring skies, tears falling into open palms, fleeting moments of joy too bittersweet to hold. His soul burned with renewed fire. There was no struggle, no searching. The music flowed as naturally as breathing, effortless and radiant. By the time the final note dissolved into the night, Kylan sagged forward, panting. A wild, breathless laugh broke from his lips. I've never played like that. His eyes shone with wonder and disbelief. Sorcha's expression softened, though her gaze held something deeper, something shadowed. This is only the beginning. The following days swept him into a whirlwind. Back in Karen Lear, when Kalen performed in the village square, a hush fell over the crowd. His music was no longer just pleasant melodies. It was transcendent. His notes wove into the hearts of listeners, stirring laughter, tears, and aching nostalgia. Children who once played during his performances now sat spellbound. Elders wiped away tears, faces bathed in memories long buried, whispers spread. "He plays like the gods themselves taught him," people murmured. Crowds swelled. Villagers from neighboring hamlets flocked to hear him. Soon merchants, travelers, even nobility came seeking the minstrel whose songs could move stone to weep. And Caelan, he should have been overwhelmed, but the music owned him now. Every note was a spark in his veins. He craved it, needed it. At night, Sorcia appeared beneath the moon, always watching, always waiting. Her presence was like the pull of a tide, impossible to resist. He played, she listened, and as the melodies poured out, her eyes glimmered with something between hunger and reverence. But after each night's symphony, he woke feeling off. At first, it was small things, a lingering ache, a hint of dizziness. Just exhaustion, he told himself. Yet when he gazed into his reflection, his eyes seemed a little darker, the shadows beneath them a little deeper. He's looking pale, isn't he? Maybe he's just working too hard, but gods, that music. And Caelan ignored it, because each time he picked up his lute, the fatigue melted away, replaced by that soaring, burning brilliance. He didn't want to stop. Weeks slipped by. The strain grew harder to dismiss. His hands, a musician's greatest tools, trembled every morning. Holding a mug, tying his tunic, simple tasks became fleeting struggles. Yet the moment his fingers brushed the lute strings, everything snapped into clarity. Power surged through him, the world sharpening into vivid detail. And Sorcia, always there, always urging with those eyes that promised glory and whispered ruin. "You knew the price," she reminded him softly one night, watching him pant after another breathtaking performance. Caelan, sweat-drenched and shaking, managed a grin. "If this is the price, it's worth it." Her smile was wistful. Not all flames burn forever. But the cost refused to remain hidden. One morning, after a noble's private concert, Caelan collapsed in his doorway, his vision blurred, breaths shallow. Staring into a basin of water, he barely recognized the face that stared back. Sunken cheeks, hollow eyes, skin stretched thin, vibrant, powerful, unstoppable. The village began to murmur, not just with awe, but worry. "He's killing himself." "But have you heard his music? I swear it's like it reaches inside you." Even Branwen confronted him. "Caelan," she pleaded, "this isn't living. She's draining you dry." He turned away, heart heavy but hands itching for the next song. "You don't understand," he whispered. "Without it, I'm nothing." Then came the night everything shattered. It was his grandest performance yet. Hundreds gathered beneath the moonlit square, torches flickering, faces tilted toward him with rapt devotion. When Caelan played, the world disappeared. There was only the music, only the ecstasy of creation. But when the final note faded and the crowd erupted in thunderous applause, Caelan couldn't stand. His legs gave out, the world tilted. Spots danced before his vision, hands reached to steady him, voices laced with concern. But through the haze, all he saw was Sorcha, standing at the edge of the square, bathed in silver light. Her face was sorrow itself. "Enough," someone whispered. "He'll die if he keeps this up." But Kaelin, his gaze never left hers. Later, alone in his cottage, he crumpled to the floor, chest heaving. When Sorcha appeared beside him, her fingertips grazing his damp hair, he didn't flinch. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you stop me?" "Because you never asked me to." Her words wrapped around him like a lullaby, soft, cruel in their truth. "You chose this, Kaelin. You wanted to burn bright. I didn't think," he gasped, shaking. "I didn't know it would feel like being hollowed out." Sorcha's eyes gleamed, a universe of regret and inevitability swirling within. "Every masterpiece demands a price," she whispered, "and yours was your soul." His laughter was a rasping, broken thing. "I wanted to be remembered." "And you will be," she promised, pressing a cool hand to his chest. "Long after you're gone, your songs will echo. Is that not what you desired?" Tears blurred his vision. "What's the point, if I'm not here to hear them?" For a moment she said nothing, then, "The brightest stars burn the fastest, Kaelin. But oh, how they dazzle before they fade." His head lolled back, breath shuddered, his pulse a flickering ember, and in the darkness of that night, the last of his song drifted away. Night fell over Cairn Lir like a suffocating blanket, the sky an inky black devoid of stars or moonlight. The village lay silent, swallowed by slumber, save for one faint glow flickering in a small house at its edge, Branwen's cottage. The old woman sat before the hearth, her weathered face bathed in the orange glow of the fire, deep lines etched by years of wisdom and sorrow. Sparks leapt from the burning logs, casting shifting shadows on the walls, making her appear as much a part of the darkness as the night itself. Outside, a frantic knock shattered the stillness, urgent, desperate, like someone clawing at the threshold between life and death. Branwen closed her eyes, sighing heavily. So, the time has come. When she opened the door, Kaelin stood there, or rather, what was left of him. His once strong frame sagged under invisible weight, skin pale and stretched tight over sharp bones. His hair hung in disheveled clumps, and dark hollows rimmed his sunken eyes. Every breath was a battle, every heartbeat a reluctant echo. "Help me." His voice was little more than a rasp, brittle and cracking. Branwen said nothing. She simply stepped aside, allowing him to stumble in. She caught him before he collapsed, guiding him to the chair beside the fire. His body shook with exhaustion, each movement a strain. Pouring a cup of steaming herbal brew, she pressed it into his trembling hands. "Drink." He obeyed. The liquid was bitter, scraping down his throat like ash, but warmth bloomed in his chest, a fleeting reprieve from the cold clawing at his inside. "I'm dying, aren't I?" His words fell heavy between them, thick with fear and reluctant acceptance. "Sorcha." The music. "I can't stop." Branwen's gaze, sharp and piercing, fixed on him. Pity flickered there, but deeper still lay grief. I warned you, she said at last, voice roughened by both age and regret. The Leanan Sídhe offers no gifts without a price. The music you wield, she gestured at his lute lying limply at his side, is woven from your very soul. I know, Kaelin whispered, a bitter laugh slipping out. I didn't think the price would be this steep. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows across his gaunt face. Branwen watched him in silence for a long moment before speaking. Ambition, she murmured, is a double-edged sword. You reached for the stars, boy, and forgot how easily they burn. Kaelin lowered his gaze, shame twisting in his gut, but beneath the remorse, a fragile spark of hope flickered, one that refused to die even now. There has to be something, he breathed, a way to break this. There's always something. Branwen's jaw tightened. Her fingers drummed against the armrest of her chair, the old wood creaking beneath her touch. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, she stood and crossed the room to an ancient chest. Dust billowed as she lifted the heavy lid. Inside lay scrolls, weathered books bound in cracked leather, and trinkets from a time long past. She sifted through them, searching, until her gnarled fingers found what she sought, a tome so old it seemed ready to crumble. She returned to the fire, setting it on the table. The pages crackled as she turned them, revealing faded ink and cryptic symbols. Stopping at a sketch, a luminous fruit, round and radiant, encased in curling vines, she tapped it with a crooked finger. This, she said, is the Amara fruit. Kaelin leaned closer, squinting at the image. What is it? The fruit of the heart of Aldemara, Branwen explained, said to be born of the forest's oldest roots. It can cleanse curses, sever bonds no magic can touch. A single bite. She paused, and the chains binding you to Sorcha will shatter. Kaelin's heart thumped, hope flaring bright and fierce. Where can I find it? Branwen's face darkened. That, she said grimly, is the catch. The Amara fruit grows deep within Aldemara, far beyond where the trees still bear names. To reach it, you must journey into the forest's core, where even Sorcha dares not tread. Why? Kaelin's voice wavered between determination and dread. What's there? Branwen's gaze drifted to the fire, the flames reflecting memories better left buried. Aldemara is no ordinary forest, she said. It's alive, thinking, and the deeper you go, the less the world makes sense. Time bends, shadows breathe. You will face not creatures but yourself, your fears, your regrets. Every lie you've ever told, every truth you've buried will rise to greet you. Silence stretched between them, thick as the darkness outside. Kaelin swallowed hard. He thought of Sorcha, her eyes like twin galaxies, beautiful and devastating. He thought of the music that had lifted him higher than he'd ever dreamed, only to drag him toward the grave. He thought of his reflection, pale and unrecognizable, staring back from every mirror. I can't just sit here and die, he whispered. Not when there's a chance, no matter how slim. Branwen's gaze softened, just a fraction. You've come this far, she said quietly. But know this, the Amara fruit demands a toll. To claim it, you must face what binds you and be willing to let it go. Kaelin frowned. Let what go? Your music. The words struck like a blade. Let go of the very thing he lived for? He shook his head. If I lose that, who am I? Branwen's expression didn't waver. A man who gets to keep breathing. Conflict churned in his chest. Grief, longing, fear, but beneath it all, resolve. I'll do it, he said at last, even if it kills me trying. I can't, I won't be Sorcha's puppet. The old woman nodded slowly, then listened carefully. The journey would be treacherous, of that there was no doubt. Before dawn broke, Caelan stood at the edge of the village, Branwen's words echoing in his mind. Follow the river until the water runs black. The trees will close in, the air will turn thin. When you see the stones that bleed, you'll be near. And when you find the tree bearing the amara fruit, be quick. The forest will not let you go easily. Behind him, Karen Lear slept, unaware of the choice that weighed heavier than any note he'd ever played. Ahead, darkness thick as ink. He gripped the lute strapped to his back, not knowing if it would save him or be his undoing. You can't have both. Branwen's final warning echoed. Music or life. And somewhere in the depths of Aldemara, the fruit awaited, glowing like a promise or a lie. Night draped over Aldemara like a thick, suffocating blanket. The air was cold enough to bite, and every breath Caelan took misted in front of him, dissolving into the darkness. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, each twisted branch seeming to reach out, clawing at his clothes, urging him to turn back. But he didn't. Couldn't. Not now. Ahead, like a solitary beacon in the sea of darkness, stood the luminous tree, its silver glow soft yet unwavering, casting ripples of light across the forest floor. It was beautiful and cruelly inviting. Caelan's steps slowed as he drew closer, heart pounding against his ribs, his breath caught in his throat, not just from exhaustion, but from what awaited him beneath those glowing branches. He wasn't sure which weighed heavier, the anticipation or the dread. Then, his gaze fell upon it, nestled among the luminous leaves. A single fruit glistened like a captured moon, the amara fruit. Its skin gleamed with a silvery hue, pulsating faintly as if breathing. Light refracted off its surface, casting delicate patterns on his trembling hands as he reached for it. Warmth radiated from the fruit, seeping into his skin, threading through his veins, a soothing warmth that promised relief, and yet danger. Just as his fingertips brushed its surface, "Are you really going to do this?" The voice sliced through the stillness like a blade. Caelan's head snapped toward the sound, his pulse spiking. Sorcha stood beneath the tree, half wrapped in shadows, half bathed in the tree's ethereal glow. Her long, dark hair flowed around her, caught in the soft breeze, and her eyes, those eyes, held a myriad of emotions: fear, sorrow, longing, and something else he couldn't name. "You came," she whispered, voice delicate yet carrying weight enough to crush. "Of course you did." Caelan tightened his grip on the fruit, anger, betrayal, and confusion swirling within him. "I came for answers." His voice cracked, torn between accusation and desperation. "And maybe..." Sorcha flinched. "Caelan..." "No," he cut her off, stepping closer. His face was shadowed, eyes burning. Don't Kaelan me. You knew exactly what this would do to me. You gave me that gift, fed me that lie, and now look at me. He gestured at himself, breath hitching. I'm fading. Every song I play pulls me closer to nothingness. Pain flickered across her face, and she took a hesitant step forward. You think I wanted this? Her voice broke. You think I chose to be the monster that drains those she cares for? His anger faltered, just a beat, but the hurt remained. Then why? Why lure me in? Why let me believe? His throat closed around the words he couldn't bear to finish. Sorcha wrapped her arms around herself, gaze falling. Because, she exhaled shakily, because you were different. I didn't come to you just for the hunger. I came because you reminded me what it felt like to be alive. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. The glow from the tree swirled around their figures, casting shifting shadows that seemed to breathe with the tension. Kaelan shook his head, voice soft but ragged. If that's true, why let it go this far? Her eyes met his, glistening, vulnerable. Because I didn't want to lose you. His heart clenched. Part of him wanted to push her away, to cling to his anger. Another part, the part that remembered every shared glance, every whispered word in the quiet of night, wanted to believe her. But then his gaze dropped to the fruit in his hand, warm, pulsing with promise. Bronwyn said this will break the curse, he said, voice strained, that if I eat it, I'm free. Sorcha's face darkened. She looked away, jaw tightening. It's not that simple. Explain, he demanded. A long silence, then, the Amara fruit is bound by truth and by heart. Her voice was barely above a whisper. If you eat it, what happens depends entirely on what you feel for me. Kaelan's pulse quickened. What do you mean? Sorcha took a step closer, her gaze unwavering now, though her hands trembled. If... She hesitated, words catching. If you truly love me, the curse will shatter. You'll be free. Hope flickered, a spark he hadn't dared feel, but before it could take root, she continued, But I will lose you. His stomach twisted. What? I'll live, but every memory of you will be gone, she explained, voice thick with emotion. Every laugh, every moment wiped away. For me, you'll be a stranger. The world seemed to tilt beneath him. And if I don't? The words tasted like ash on his tongue. Her smile was bitter. Then I die. Silence crashed down like a wave. Kaelan staggered back, nearly dropping the fruit. His mind reeled, heart pounding so violently it hurt. No, this can't be it. Two paths, both unbearable. Live, but be forgotten, or be remembered by a woman lying lifeless at his feet. This is a joke, he whispered, voice shaking. Some cruel, twisted joke. Sorcha's tears shimmered, but she didn't reach for him. I wish it were. He turned away, scrubbing a hand down his face. His chest was a battlefield, anger warring with sorrow, hope colliding with dread. Love. Was that what this was? He cared, deeply, enough to ache at the thought of losing her, but love? Could he name it that? And even if he could, how do you choose between two kinds of loss? There has to be another way, he rasped. There always is. Sorcha's expression softened, eyes shining. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means holding on, no matter the cost. He clenched the fruit so tightly his knuckles ached. His heart, his cursed, treacherous heart, wanted both. Wanted her. Wanted life, wanted the impossible. Sorcha stepped forward, closing the gap between them, her hand, cool and familiar, pressed against his chest, right over his wildly beating heart. "Don't think," she whispered. "Feel." But that was the problem. He felt too much. His voice broke. "I don't know." Sorcha smiled, soft, sad, infinitely tender. "Neither do I." And beneath the luminous glow of the ancient tree, surrounded by the breath of the forest and the weight of impossible choices, two souls stood on the edge of heartbreak, caught between love and the cost of it. When every path leads to loss, how do you choose which heart to break? The wind howled through the ancient trees of Aldemare, their twisted branches clawing at the night sky like the fingers of forgotten spirits. The forest was thick with silence, save for the faint rustling of leaves and the steady beat of Kaelin's heart, echoing in his chest like a war drum. His breaths came in short, ragged gasps, each one laced with both exhaustion and dread. Ahead of him, like a lone star burning in the darkness, stood the luminous tree. Its silver glow bathed the clearing in a soft light, ethereal and haunting, as if the forest itself held its breath. Kaelin's gaze dropped to the amara fruit in his palm. It pulsed with warmth, radiant and deceptively gentle, as if offering a promise. Relief, freedom, an end to the pain. But at what cost? Across from him, Sorcha stood silently, her face half shrouded in shadows, half illuminated by the tree's glow. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, catching the silver light, and her eyes, gods those eyes, held a storm of emotions. Fear, sorrow, and something deeper, love laced with desperation. "You have to decide," she whispered, her voice trembling, each word cutting through the thick tension between them. Kaelin tightened his grip on the fruit, feeling the faint thrum of its magic beneath his fingers. A part of him wanted to sink his teeth into it, to end this torment, to breathe freely again without the weight of the curse gnawing at his soul. But the price hung heavy in the air. If he loved her, and God's help him he did, she would forget. Every glance, every touch, every whispered secret under starlit skies would vanish from her mind like morning mist. He glanced at Sorcha again. Her shoulders were tense as if bracing for impact. Her lips pressed into a thin line, though tears glistened in her eyes. "If you truly love me," she repeated softly, "the curse will break. You'll be free, but I won't remember you." A blade of pain twisted in his chest. "And if I don't?" he asked, already knowing but needing to hear it. Sorcha swallowed hard. "Then I die." Silence. Heavy, suffocating. Kaelin's knees nearly buckled. He turned away, dragging a hand through his hair, his mind spinning. Two choices, both unbearable: live and lose her, or keep her and let her die. He wanted to laugh, scream, cry, but his throat clenched shut. No one should be asked to make this choice. Sorcha stepped closer, her voice breaking. If you hesitate, then maybe you don't love me enough, and that's okay. If saving yourself means letting me go, Stop, he cut her off, voice raw. He turned to face her, eyes blazing. Don't you dare make this easier for me. Don't pretend you don't matter. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I do matter. But so do you. You deserve to live, Kaylin, to breathe without this curse choking you. And you deserve to live too. His voice cracked. How am I supposed to choose between my life and yours? Her lips quivered. That's the cruelty of it. He stared at the amara fruit, so deceptively simple in his hand. One bite, that's all it would take. Freedom at the cost of forgetting, or holding onto memories that would haunt him forever. And then clarity struck like lightning. Love wasn't supposed to be easy. It wasn't supposed to be selfish. It was messy, painful, and sometimes it meant sacrificing everything for someone else's happiness. His chest tightened. If I eat this, you'll forget me. His voice was barely a whisper, but you'll live free, happy. Sorcha's gaze faltered. Maybe, but I'll lose what we had, and I'll carry it for both of us. He smiled sadly. Memories aren't burdens when they're about you. Her breath hitched, and for a moment it seemed like she might protest. But then she nodded. Tears streamed down her face, and she reached out, cupping his cheek with trembling fingers. I wish I could remember this moment forever. Me too. His voice broke. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling. A fleeting, final intimacy. Then, Kaylin pulled away, lifting the amara fruit to his lips. Sorcha gasped, but he shook his head gently. Live, Sorcha, even if it's without me. Just live. His teeth sank into the fruit. Sweetness exploded on his tongue, followed by a searing bitterness. Light flared, blinding. Agony ripped through him, every vein ablaze with fire and ice. He dropped to his knees, vision blurring, ears ringing with 1,000 voices. Pain, so much pain. But through it all, Kaylin! Sorcha's voice, frantic, desperate, echoed in his fading consciousness. No, don't. He smiled through the tears and darkness. Thank you for letting me love you. And then he fainted. The silver light of the luminous tree gradually faded, as if the ancient being itself had exhausted its final breath. Aldamara settled into its familiar silence, but this time it wasn't suffocating. This silence was full of endings and a trace of hope. Kaylin sat slumped against the tree trunk, his breaths shallow, chest still aching from the power of the amara fruit. The physical pain was fleeting compared to the gaping emptiness now carving through him. The curse was broken. He could feel it, the lightness in his limbs, the return of warmth in his veins. But relief was hollow when weighed against what he had lost. And Sorcha. He lifted his gaze. She stood before him, her face, so achingly familiar, still held the softness he knew by heart. Her dark hair spilled over her shoulders, glimmering beneath the moonlight, but her eyes, those eyes that once overflowed with shared memories, warmth and tender glances, now stared back at him with polite curiosity, void of recognition. Yet something else had changed. Subtly but unmistakably, Sorcha was no longer ethereal. No lingering aura of otherworldliness surrounded her. No faint glow trailed her movements. She was human, entirely and beautifully ordinary. "Are you all right?" Her voice, though the same in sound, lacked the familiar lilt that once melted his defenses. Kaylin swallowed, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine," she hesitated, glancing around the empty clearing. "I woke up not long ago. Everything's fuzzy. I don't know how I got here." Her gaze flicked back to him, brows knitting. "Do we know each other?" The question struck like a blade. Gods, how he wanted to say yes, to gather her close and pour every memory into her hands, to remind her of their laughter beneath moonlit skies, whispered words between verses of music, stolen glances that lingered too long. But what good would it do? Her memories were gone, erased by the choice he had made. Kaylin's heart twisted. He lowered his gaze. "No, just a passerby." Her lips curled into a smile, kind, warm, heartbreakingly unfamiliar. "Oh, sorry. You just seemed familiar for a moment." "You're not wrong. You just can't remember." "What's your name?" she asked softly. His throat clenched. "It doesn't matter." Sorcha, no, Lyra now, as the villagers would later name her, gave him a puzzled look but let it go. "I should find my way back. Thank you, I guess?" Kaylin nodded. "Take care of yourself." She lingered a heartbeat longer, then turned, footsteps crunching softly on the forest floor, and just like that, she walked out of his life. The following weeks passed in a blur. Kaylin stayed in the nearby village, renting a small room above an old tavern. Nights were spent at the edge of town, guitar resting against his chest, fingers gliding over strings. Music flowed freely again, no longer tainted by exhaustion or dark hunger. The curse had taken much, but it had left his talent intact. And yet, something was missing. No melody could replicate the sound of Sorcha's laugh. No chord progression could echo the way her gaze softened when she looked at him. Every note was a reminder of what he'd lost. Lyra had settled into village life effortlessly. She worked at the local tea shop, greeting patrons with that bright smile he used to treasure. Children adored her. Villagers spoke kindly of her. From a distance, Kaylin watched, just enough to see her happy. That was enough, or so he told himself. One afternoon, beneath a sky tinged with amber and rose hues, Kaylin sat by the brook, guitar balanced on his knee, soft melodies drifting into the breeze. "You're the stranger, right?" His fingers froze mid-chord. Slowly he looked up. "Lyra." The setting sun painted her in golden light, casting a glow around her that made his breath catch. Even without memories, her presence still hit him like a song half remembered but deeply felt. Yeah, he managed. "I guess I am." She sat beside him, close enough for him to catch the faint scent of lavender, so familiar it hurt. "I see you around town a lot. Always playing." "Music helps me let go of things." His voice was rougher than he intended. She tilted her head. "Funny, when I hear you play, it feels like I'm remembering something, like a dream I can't quite grasp." He gripped the guitar tighter, knuckles whitening. Music does that sometimes. Triggers emotions, memories. Maybe. She offered a small, wistful smile. "Or maybe some part of me knows you, even if my mind doesn't." His heart twisted. You do know me. Your heart remembers what your mind cannot. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the babbling brook and distant village chatter. Lyra glanced at the sky, sighing. Anyway, I should go. Just wanted to say, your music's beautiful. Feels like it's telling a story I wish I could hear. Kalen swallowed the lump in his throat. It is a story, he whispered, gaze distant, but sometimes the best stories are the ones left unsaid. She paused, then nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Standing, she dusted off her skirt. Take care of yourself, stranger. You too, Lyra. Her name tasted bittersweet on his tongue. And with that, she walked away again. Footsteps echoing like fading notes. Months later, Kalen packed his things. It was time. Staying any longer would only prolong a pain he needed to outgrow. He wasn't sure where he'd go, just knew he couldn't linger in the shadow of what once was. But before leaving, he stopped by the tea shop one last time. Lyra greeted him with that ever-familiar smile. Leaving town? He nodded. Time for a new song, I guess. Her smile faltered, a hint of sadness peeking through. I wish you well, then. Kalen hesitated at the door, then turned back. Sometimes, he said carefully, we meet people who leave marks on us, even if we can't remember why. Lyra's eyes glistened. Is that what we were, people who mattered? Once. His chest ached. Maybe. A beat of silence. Then, if you ever hear a melody that makes your heart ache, he added, don't be afraid of it. Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind forgets. Tears welled in her eyes, though she didn't understand why. Why do I feel like crying? He smiled gently. Because some connections don't need memories to exist. Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked away. Behind him. Wait, her voice cracked. What's your name? He paused, but didn't look back. Just a traveler, he called over his shoulder. Nothing more. And then he was gone. That night, under a tapestry of stars, Kalen sat by the road's edge, guitar in hand. Fingers danced over strings, weaving a melody soaked in longing and love, loss and bittersweet acceptance. The song wasn't for him. It wasn't even for her. It was for what they had shared. Fleeting, beautiful, and unforgettable, even if only to him. As notes drifted into the cool night air, he closed his eyes, letting the music carry him back to laughter under moonlight, to hands brushing in quiet moments, to a love that had been sacrificed for something greater. And as the final note lingered, fading into the darkness, Kalen whispered into the void, even if you forget me, my heart will remember for us both. Some loves aren't measured by how long they last, but by how deeply they linger, long after the memories have gone. The tale of Kalen and Sorcha beautifully captures timeless lessons that resonate deeply in modern life. At its core, the story is about sacrifice, love, and the complexities of choice. True love isn't always about holding on. It's often about letting go for the happiness of the person you cherish. In a world that encourages personal gain and instant gratification, Kalen's selfless decision reminds us that real love prioritizes the well-being of the other, even at the expense of personal joy. The story also explores the idea that memories may fade, but the impact of genuine connections lingers. In our fast-paced lives, it's easy to overlook the importance of meaningful relationships and emotional bonds. Yet, it is these intangible connections that often shape who we are. Lastly, it teaches that difficult choices are part of growth. Not every decision comes with a happy ending, but every choice we make defines our character. Just as Leanan faced his heartbreak to protect Sorcha, we too must sometimes endure loss to uphold kindness, empathy, and love. In modern times, the story encourages us to value what truly matters: love, selflessness, and emotional authenticity. Even when life asks for hard decisions. The story has come to an end, and now it's time for you to embrace this peaceful moment and let go of the worries and fatigue of the day. Find a comfortable position in bed. Gently close your eyes and let your breath become the rhythm guiding your mind toward tranquility. Take a slow, deep breath in. Feel the cool air filling your lungs and expanding your chest. Hold it for a few seconds, then slowly exhale, imagining all your worries and tension dissolving with each breath out. Repeat this a few times, allowing each exhale to release more of the day's weight. Now gently bring your attention to your body. Starting from the tips of your toes, let a warm wave of relaxation spread upward, softening your ankles, calming your calves, soothing your knees. With each breath, feel your body sinking deeper into comfort and warmth. Let your mind drift like a soft cloud, needing nothing but the calm embracing you. If stray thoughts appear, don't worry. Imagine them as leaves floating gently down a stream. Simply observe and let them pass without holding on. Picture a place where you feel completely safe and peaceful. It could be a forest with rustling leaves, a moonlit beach, or simply the warmth of your bed. Let your imagination wander there, bathing in the calm of this sanctuary. To help you drift even deeper into restful sleep, I invite you to listen to healing frequency sound. This gentle music is designed to support your body's recovery after a long day, bringing balance and renewing your energy. Allow the soothing vibrations to envelop you, melting away any lingering tension. You've given your best throughout the day, and now you deserve to rest fully. Let yourself be embraced by warmth, by stillness, by the healing power of sleep. Wishing you a deep, peaceful, and restorative sleep. Tomorrow holds new energy, new hope, and renewed joy. Good night.